With all the gold medals that have been given out at the Olympics, the person who also deserves one is Jonathan Owens, Simone Biles' husband. You see, it's one thing for Simone to go and win on the mat and do the gymnastic stuff that she's doing, and she's killing it, greatest of all time, all of that. Honor her for that. But what's awesome is the things that she's been through in her life, whether through gymnastics or through her family or through being sexually abused through the gymnastics program. To still be able to perform on the mat is huge. But to be able to perform at home and have a marriage like she has is even harder. Because oftentimes in sports and life and business, what we can do is we can check out. We can go and just like turn off those emotions and just let our body do the work. But what we can't do is do that at home usually. When there's no cameras on, when there's no performing, when it's just us in intimate situations, usually our past traumas and our hurts and things like that come into play big time. She's not letting that happen in her life. And I'm going to touch on that here in just a little bit, but I want to jump on her husband because her husband is a huge part of why she's able to do this. You see, if you don't know much about him, her husband plays for the Chicago Bears, professional football athlete, and he left training camp right now to go to the Paris Olympics to go spend multiple days to watch her compete. Now you would think, of course, my wife's competing in the Olympics, I'm going to go watch. But I promise you, to become a professional athlete, there is a level of dedication that most people do not understand. And you kind of have to be selfish in a certain way because it takes so much drive and dedication to make that happen. Here's the thing about the NFL. The window of period that you actually are going to be an athlete and be in the league and make your money is very, very short. I don't know the stats, but I think the average player, the lifespan of a player is like 3 to 4 years, and it might even be shorter than that. And so for him to be able to leave training camp when they only take 53 people on that roster, to be able to go over there and support his wife, guess what? He's taking his risk of him not being maybe a starter, knowing the schemes, because he's new to the Chicago Bears. He was on the Green Bay Packers last year. So he's learning all new team, all new schemes, and all of that, trying to prove himself on this team, but he left in the middle of it to go support his wife. Yes, shout out to the Chicago Bears. They supported him and let him go do that and all of that. But at the same time, his heart had to be hurt and thinking, man, am I not going to be the player that I can be because of this? Here's the thing. When you fly across the world, as we all know, you're going to get jet lagged. You're going to come back jet lagged. And now he's missed significant time on the field there just in training camp. Is it going to impact his performance, right, on those things? We don't know what was going on in his head and his heart, but he did it anyways. And when you do that anyways, it wasn't like he's coaching Simone, he's on the bench with her, or anything like that. What he's doing, he's just there to show support, showing you are more important than me. You see, the Bible talks about the wives being submissive to the husband, but it also says in the next verse that for that to happen, the husband needs to love their wife like Christ loved the church, right? That's dying for the church. So what he's doing is he's dying to himself to be able to go and do this. He very well is taking a negative impact in his performance or maybe his spot on the team or in his future career to go support and love his wife. That right there will last far longer than what happens into his NFL career. That's something that's going to go forever because now when she sees those gold medals, she's always going to think to herself, my husband was in the crowd. But if he wasn't in the crowd, she's going to think to herself, my husband stayed home. And yes, I understand and all this other thing, and it might not be that big of a deal, but I promise you, when there's a sacrifice made, our wives notice these things. What are we doing to sacrifice for ourselves, sacrifice things in our life that we enjoy, that are going to make us feel whole, that we've worked our whole life for, to just die off, to be able to go serve our spouse? I promise you it's a big deal. Talk to any professional athlete. When they get sick, it's like the hardest thing. Their mental is going down the drain, or if they get injured because they can't train and get better. So when you're specifically choosing to go do something like this, there is a thing that plays into it in your mind and your heart. Diane and I always teach on these things right here, and this is the pillars that marriages should have. And I want to shout out to Jonathan because he was doing this in the correct way. There's a pillars of priorities that we need to follow, and if we follow these pillars of priorities, life goes as it should go. I promise you that. It goes God, self, marriage, kids, business. Now for him, his business is the NFL. And I'm going to break that priority list down for you just real quick to break through it. God, number one. And that's just not believing and getting baptized and stopping at that. That's like He's your number one priority in life, and your actions and your habits reflect that. Number two, self isn't like, hey, I'm drinking beers with the boys, I'm playing golf on the weekends, I'm like doing all that stuff. No, that's not what that means. That means that you are spiritually, mentally, and physically on point so that you show up with a cup full to your marriage. So then when both of you guys show up with the full cups to the marriage, that in itself will have a marriage thriving. But then that will overflow onto the kids. And because everything and all that's in order, then everything in business and life just tends to go a lot better. But if that's all out of whack, the pressure on your business, the pressure in all areas of life, the pressure when you're performing in sports are going to be hard because your home life sucks, so you need to kill it in business because that's the only thing filling your cup. But when God, self, marriage, and kids are on point, by the time you get to business or sports or things like that, that is your career, it doesn't matter as much. So you perform with less pressure on you, especially in something like the Olympics where there is already a ton of pressure. But when she looks over into the crowd, she sees her husband there. How much does that just take it away? But here's the thing, she's a Christian as well. She knows God works all things together for good. So that takes away some of the pressure. So she can go out and just be herself and just let it fly. They're professional athletes, and the dedication that takes to be able to do that will transfer to the marriage. 100% because of the discipline and dedication and knowing what works and what doesn't. So you have to do those things that work and don't do the things that do not work. They're doing that in their marriage. Diane's always done this phenomenal with me. I've always been the one out running and doing gunning and doing all that different stuff. And she's always been there supporting me. And I'll be real with you, a lot of the times there was selfish things in it for me. But because when I finally, as God says, he who has ears, let him hear, realized our marriage was in a good spot because she was already doing it. But then I flipped that onto her. And now I'm doing that for her. That her self-confidence, self-worth, self-esteem, all of that's going through the roof. And when that happens, where do you think that transfers? Into the marriage, into the bedroom, into all different areas. And it's really, really cool what happens. So men, I'm challenging all of us. Does your wife know that she is the main priority above your career? How many men stay late at work and they justify it because they say, but this is for the family? Do you think that him playing in the NFL is for the family? Yeah, in certain aspects, for sure. But I've yet to meet anybody that runs businesses and overworks and all of that doesn't have some self thing in it of significance, of validation, or they just thoroughly enjoy it. But when the Bible talks about us dying to self, this is part of that. So when our wives see that we're dying to ourselves for them, the trust that we want from them so badly is given. The validation that we want from them so bad is given. The respect that we want from them so bad is given to us. They're seeing us and knowing, whoa, what is he doing for me? I know how much that means to him. I know how much they've worked hard for this, for him. Or for her, that they're doing this for me. It's powerful. It's wild. It's so important. That's how you get your wife to be submissive. That's how you get your wife to follow you. Why do you think Jesus was followable? Because he did that. Not only did he go to the cross, he washed the people's feet. He's the king of the world and he's washing feet. Come on now. Are we willing to wash feet? What's that look like for us? Are we willing to not go to training camp to go support our spouse? Are we willing to get off work at 5 o'clock and so we don't work till 7 so we can actually have a good marriage with our wife and our kids? Are we willing to not maybe go do our hobbies all the time so we can have a great marriage with our wife? Are we willing to control our tongue so we can have that great marriage with our wife? Are we willing to be disciplined in our physical, mental, and spiritual so we can have that great marriage with our wife? That's how we become followable. So men, I challenge you today and ask yourself, we all know it. Where's the one area I really need to cut back on that my wife will take really big notice of this? And not only just for her to notice me on this, she'll feel extremely loved when I go and do this. It's not always easy to get it to that point, but it's also very beneficial. I'm going to touch on one last point here. It's this. Simone Biles grew up in a family that has substance abuse. She was part of that sex abuse scandal in the gymnastics thing. And then in the Tokyo Olympics, she had that big collapse in front of the whole world. She was the marquee athlete for that Olympics, and she had this big collapse in front of everybody. Imagine how terrible that felt. We don't want to let anybody down because we all wonder what other people think of us, let alone in front of literally the whole world. Drops the ball. But the Bible in Romans 8:28 says, God works all things together for good for those who love him. She loves him. My life verse is this, Genesis 50:20. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So she could have used her circumstances to fail in gymnastics. She could have used those circumstances to never compete again. She could use those circumstances to fail in her marriage. But instead, she's using those to save many lives, to be an inspiration, to go out there and now get a gold medal after she dropped the ball last time. She's doing this through all of those things. I knew far too many marriages who've been through hard things as a kid, and now they carry that trauma into their marriage and they say, but I've been through this. I hate to tell you, everybody's situation is not all that different. All different hurts, we all have different hurts and traumas, but they all, to a certain extent, feel very, very similar. Same way happiness doesn't feel very differently. And that's hard to hear, but it's the truth. She's just not using hers as a crutch to hold her back. She's using hers to save lives. So I challenge you to do the same with yours. When you use your hard things for good, not only will you heal those hard things, you'll save other people's lives, and you'll find peace and joy that you never thought was possible because of those hard things. So Jonathan Owens, I salute you. Simone Biles, I salute you. And men out there, this is a call for you to go serve your wife and serve the Lord the same way. If any of you guys are confused on how to do this, I coach for a living. Drop the word blueprint in the comment below, and I'll send you a free resource to get you on track and get you headed in the right direction. Also, I'd love it if you just liked, commented, and subscribed to this channel. I can't tell you how much that actually means to me and my family to be able to grow this channel and just reach more people. So thank you so much. God bless y'all.